You just checked your phone. Maybe it was an email. Maybe it was an app. Somewhere, quietly, a 3-digit number decided something about you. You didn't vote on it. You didn't design it. But it controls more of your life than you think. Start with the moment most people actually meet that number. It's usually a rejection, an apartment application, a car loan, a credit card, someone behind a desk, or more often now, a computer behind a screen, looks at a figure between 300 and 850 and makes a decision about your character. Not your actual character, a number standing in for it. Here's the strange part. That number didn't always exist. For most of human history, trust was personal. It had a face. Think about your ancestors 10,000 years ago. If you needed to borrow grain until the next harvest, you didn't fill out a form. You asked your neighbor, and your neighbor said yes or no based on something anthropologists call reputational memory. They remembered whether you paid people back. They remembered your father's reputation too. Trust was local. It was slow. It was built face-to-face over years, inside a small group of maybe 150 people, a number the anthropologist Robin Dunbar later identified as the natural limit of stable human relationships. You could keep track of about 150 people's reputations in your head. Beyond that, memory failed. So what happens when a society grows past 150 people? Past a village? Past a city? Trust breaks down. Strangers can't vouch for strangers. And for most of history, that meant most economic life stayed local, cautious, and slow. Then came the 20th century, and with it, a problem. American cities exploded. People moved constantly, chasing jobs, chasing opportunity. Lenders faced a new kind of stranger, someone with no shared history, no mutual neighbor, no face anyone recognized. How do you decide whether to trust someone you've never met and will maybe never see again? The earliest answer was almost comically human. Local credit bureaus in the late 1800s literally hired people to gossip. Investigators visited neighbors, employers, even bartenders, and wrote reports on a person's habits, drinking, marital stability, perceived honesty. Wealthy men doing morally questionable things earned high trust. Struggling widows raising children alone were often marked as risky. It wasn't data. It was prejudice wearing a filing cabinet. By the 1950s, engineers named Bill Fair and Earl Isaac looked at this mess and asked a radical question. What if you removed the gossip entirely? What if a machine, using only financial behavior, could predict risk better than a human's opinion of your character? In 1958, they built the first credit scoring system. It ignored race, religion, and reputation, at least on paper, and instead looked purely at repayment patterns. It was, in a strange way, an attempt to be fairer than the humans it replaced. And it worked well enough that by 1989, the modern FICO score was born, a single 3-digit number meant to compress your entire financial life into something a stranger could judge in seconds. Here's where it starts controlling more than you realize. Humans didn't evolve to trust numbers. We evolved to trust faces. Researchers like Paul Slovic, who studies risk perception, have shown that people respond emotionally to individual stories and shut down emotionally when a number represents a group or a category. A number doesn't smile. It doesn't apologize. It doesn't explain that it was a rough year. And yet we now let it stand in for the entire negotiation that trust used to require. Think about what your credit score actually measures. Not whether you're a good person, not whether you're reliable to your friends, or show up for your family, or work hard. It measures 5 narrow things: payment history, amount owed, length of credit history, new credit inquiries, credit mix. That's it. A single missed payment from a medical emergency can weigh as heavily in that formula as years of responsible behavior. The system doesn't know your story. It only knows your pattern. And once that number exists, it stops being neutral. It starts shaping the very behavior it claims to measure. This is where the story turns genuinely strange. Sociologists call this the looking glass effect, the idea that people begin to act according to how they believe others see them. Once Americans understood their financial worth was being measured and scored, financial behavior itself changed. People started opening credit cards specifically to build history. People started keeping small balances open, Not because they needed the money, but because the algorithm rewarded activity. The score wasn't just measuring behavior anymore, it was producing it. Now zoom out further, because the reach of this number extends far beyond banks. This is the part that actually insurance companies use credit-based scores to set your premiums. Landlords use it to decide if you deserve housing. Some employers, particularly for finance-related jobs, check it before hiring. A number originally designed to predict loan repayment quietly became a proxy for trustworthiness in almost every corner of adult life. Researchers studying algorithmic bias, including work associated with Cathy O'Neill, author of the influential analysis on mathematical models called Weapons of Math Destruction, have pointed out something uncomfortable. Because credit scores are built on historical financial data, and because historical financial access in America was deeply unequal along racial and geographic lines, the algorithm doesn't erase old inequality. It quietly inherits it. A system built to remove human bias ended up encoding it in a more invisible form, hidden inside math instead of gossip. Here's the twist most people never think about. The credit score isn't really about your past, it's a bet on your future. Lenders don't actually care what you did. They care what you're likely to do next. Which means, in a very real sense, you're not being judged. You're being predicted. And prediction changes how you live in the present. Think about how often modern life asks you to prove your future reliability before it will trust you today. A landlord wants proof you'll pay rent for the next 12 months. A lender wants proof you'll repay across the next 5 years. Even dating apps, in a much softer echo of the same logic, ask you to prove future compatibility through a profile built from past behavior. Trust, once a face-to-face negotiation between two people who might see each other again next week, has become a statistical forecast, calculated by a machine that will never meet you. Which brings us back to your ancestors and their 150 remembered faces. They didn't need a credit score because trust and consequence lived in the same small world. If you cheated your neighbor, everyone knew by sundown. The punishment was social, immediate, and deeply personal. Modern society solved the problem of scale, strangers trusting strangers across a country of millions, but it paid for that solution with something quieter: anonymity. And anonymity needed a substitute for memory. That substitute became your score. So the next time that 3-digit number flashes on a screen, deciding whether you deserve an apartment, a car, or a lower interest rate, remember what it actually is. It isn't a judgment of your soul. It's a modern mathematical echo of something profoundly ancient. A stranger trying to answer the oldest question in human cooperation. Can I trust you? Your ancestors answered that question by looking at your face. Now a machine answers it by reading your history, and it decides more of your life than you ever agreed to hand over. Tonight, when you check your phone and see that number, you're not looking at a verdict. You're looking at the modern shape of an old human instinct, still asking the same question it always has, just without a face attached to it anymore.